you have cabinet today. So what we shall do, I will hand over to the chairperson of this first session, Mr. Richard Juko, who is standing in for the permanent secretary. Mr. Juko is substantively the Undersecretary, Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, and he will chair this first session. Mr. Juko, over to you. Program.
Thank you very much, MC. Good morning, distinguished participants. At this juncture, before we formally start, I would wish to call upon the UN Women Country representative to come up the podium and take up her seat if she's around, or the representative. As we wait for her to take up her seat, I wish to welcome you, Honorable Minister of State for Lands, Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, distinguished participants, development partners, landowners, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to welcome you to this conference. This conference is the first ever of its kind. It is the National Land Forum, which is organized by Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development in partnership with LandNet Uganda. This is happening at a time when the Land Act, which was enacted in 1998, is making 20 years. Hence, the theme for today's conference, which is familiar to all of us, which is Land Act at 20, making land work in Uganda. As we've been briefed by the MC, the Honorable Minister has some other engagements, will not take a lot of time. And on that note, I will straight away call upon Dr. Moses Musinguzi, who is the chair and board of director, LandNet Uganda, to come and give his opening remarks as we start our conference.
The Honorable Minister of State for Lands, Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, the top management and staff of the Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, heads of other ministries, departments and agencies, including those from local governments, development partners, members of the civil society, academia, researchers, and the private sector, all invited delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I've already been introduced. My name is Moses Musinguzi, and I am the chairperson of the board of Directors for LandNet. I take this honor to welcome all of you to this first National Land Forum. The Land Forum is one of the planned actions under the National Engagement Strategy of the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. The National Engagement Strategy brings together all stakeholders in the land sector to agree on the various interventions that can be done in the land sector. Of course, as all of you may appreciate, the land sector is such a broad sector encompassing different players, different professions, and so on. And sometimes coming to a consensus or compromise is very complicated. Not because that we don't know what we want, but all of us have different perceptions of land and what actions need to take place. This forum has been organized jointly by LandNet. LandNet is categorized under civil society and the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, which is government. This manifestation of the growing bond between government and the civil society. And as many of you may appreciate, these are sometimes conflicting partners, not in Uganda, but everywhere in the world. The civil society and government are normally in conflict, but we are happy that in Uganda, we are beginning to move as one team. This three-day conference will cover almost all the aspects of land, from technical, legal, political, economic, social, and institutional, meaning that each one of us has something to contribute or has something to learn. I would like to thank the sponsors. I would like to thank the keynote presenters and other presenters, the chairs of sessions, and all of you delegates for making this possible. I hope, and I'm quite optimistic, that this forum will present a platform for reflection, for learning and planning the contribution of land to sustainable economic and social development. Once again, I welcome all of you, and I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moses Msinguzi, for the opening remarks. They have been clear and elaborate and to the point. At this juncture, I'd like to call upon the representative of the UN Women Country Program to make her opening remarks. Thank you so much. The representative of the UN Women representative is Ms. Susan Oregede.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The guest of honor, Honorable Persis Namuganza Princess, Minister of State for Lands, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, the chair, representatives from government, development partners, the representatives from civil society, the media, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and honor for me to make remarks on behalf of UN Women. It is a great pleasure to make remarks on behalf of the UN Women on the occasion of the first National Land Forum. UN Women is the United Nations entity that is dedicated to the advancement of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls globally. First of all, I wish to commend the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development and LandNet for organizing this National Land Forum under the theme Land Act at 20, Making Land Work for Uganda. Right, Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, land is a marker and maker for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Uganda is among UN member states that endorse the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. Allow me to highlight two key targets in the Sustainable Development Goals that relate to land. The first one under Goal 1 on poverty, which is to ensure that all men and women, in particular the poor and vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources as well as ownership and control over land and other forms of property, including inheritance and natural resources. The second under Goal 5 on gender equality, which is to undertake reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources as well as access to and ownership and control over land and other forms of property, inheritance and natural resources. It is not news that 70 to 90% of wealth in Africa is generated from land. Yet only a small portion, less than 10% of land is owned by women. In Uganda, only 3 in 10 women own land, according to the Uganda Demographic and Health Survey of 2016. These staggering statistics highlights the urgent need to address women's land rights in Africa, particularly in regards to women's economic empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, the rising number of conflicts and violence due to land grabbing, inheritance, and the rampant evictions is of great concern to all Ugandans. It is a pity that the majority of the victims are women, children, widows, and the elderly, who even cannot access justice. I will now highlight to you some of the achievements of the Land Act, 1998 Land Act. The Act has protected the land tenure security for Ugandans through the creation of land management structures at national and subnational level. There has been the adoption of the National Land Policy of 2013 and the development of a gender strategy for implementation of the land policy. Despite all the above and other achievements, a significant number of Ugandans are yet to realize tenure of security, particularly the vulnerable women and men. According to the Uganda Social Institution and Gender Index, 27% of the population in Uganda are against land rights, are against equal land rights for men and women, with as many as 54% of the population in northern Uganda agreeing to this. This lack of recognition of women's land rights is reinforced by negative customary practices that conflict with statutory laws and exacerbate unequal access, control, and ownership of land in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, the above challenges call for context-specific and joint remedies by the community, government, civil society, the media, and all development partners. Permit me at this juncture to make some recommendations to the land question in Uganda with a bias towards women. The first one is we call upon government to expedite the amendment of the Succession Act to remove clauses and provisions that discriminate against women, and that are contrary to the Constitution of Uganda. The first reading of the Succession Amendment Bill 2018 on the floor of Parliament last week is a significant step in the right direction, and we congratulate government for that. Secondly, to undertake the review of all policies and statutory legal instruments and customary frameworks on land tenure to address all forms of discrimination in access, control, and ownership of land, and promote women's ownership or co-ownership of land. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, strengthen the capacity of land management structures in gender-sensitive and human rights-based land management approaches so that they are able to recognize the rights, particularly of women and girls and vulnerable communities in owning land. And lastly, we also call upon government to increase sensitization of the public on land tenure security and promote cultural norms and practices that promote land rights for women. We thank civil society organizations and LandNet in particular, government and other development partners for the work so far done. Honorable Minister, your presence today is a sign of your commitment to addressing the land question in Uganda, and a great honor to women, girls, and all Ugandans who are facing land problems. As UN Women, we pledge our continued support to ensuring that all Ugandans, especially women and vulnerable people, benefit from security of land tenure. I thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you very much, UN Women representative, for your opening remarks. Before I call upon the Honorable Minister to make her remarks and officially open the National Land Forum, I wish to first call upon Mr. Ian Dolan and team to come and launch the national engagement strategy. I would request that we do that very quickly because of some other engagements. Thank you so much.
Hello. Sorry about the confusion there. I thought I was coming up after ILC. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, to the Honourable Minister of State, to the Permanent Secretary, to all the development partners, sponsors and supporters, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I work for Trócaire, or Trócaire, which is an Irish organisation. It's a part of the Caritas Global Network, so it's Caritas Ireland. We are very pleased to be supporting this first national forum. Thanks especially to LandNet and to the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development for organising all this. I've been asked just to talk a little bit about the NES. So, Trócaire has been a member of the International Land Coalition for a number of years, and we have been involved in the rejuvenation of the NES here in Uganda, along with a number of other organizations. So we've been asked, working with local organizations here, to spearhead some of that rejuvenation. So a number of meetings have taken place over the last year and more to come to where we are today in terms of the NES. So the NES has a number of thematic groups. They are land governance, land and investment, gender and land, natural resource management, and then capacity building of the ILC members as a cross-cutting issue. Trócaire as an organisation it's kind of a funder of local organisations. It's a partnership organisation. It's a capacity building organisation. So normally it's not our role to front something like this, but we are facilitating that process for a couple of years until we can hand over all of that process to local civil society here. So I think I've been asked to call out some of the organisation leads on the thematic groups. So I will do that now. So they are land and gender. It is Francis from Ukobak. I don't know if Francis is there. Thank you, Francis. We have the land and governance, LandNet. That is Lillian representing. Thank you, Lillian. And land and investment, we have Safer World, and that is Betty. We're doing well on the gender here. Oh, it's not Betty. Okay. And on natural resource management, we have Food Rights Alliance, so that is Agnes, I believe. And for Trócaire, my own organisation, Rebecca is our lead on that. Rebecca, please come. And also ULA, I would like them to come with their representatives. I think it's Algorecia. They are a member of the steering committee. So these are the people who have been moving the NES forward over the last year or two to get where we are today in terms of the NES. So I'd just like you to recognize, and perhaps you could give them a round of applause for all their work. Thank you very much. So I think we see over there the objectives of the NES on the poster there. So I'd just like to congratulate all the representatives here on the work that they have done and what they've achieved so far. They have developed a strategy for each of these thematic areas. So I hope that they will move forward to try and achieve the NES goals. So I think that is the end of what I have to say. I think I was told I have to invite ILC to come and say a few words. So please, Audis, is it? Okay. Thank you, Audis.
Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. On behalf of the International Land Coalition Africa, I want to say that it is a very great pleasure for us to be here in this National Land Forum. The International Coalition is a global network of civil society organizations, international NGOs, and intergovernmental organizations working for people-centered land governance. The coalition has currently 252 members worldwide, including 76 members in Africa, spread in 26 countries in Africa, including Uganda. In Uganda, we have several international organization members, including Trocare, leading on this NES process. But we have 4 national organization member of ILC, namely ULA, LEMU, ACME, and UCBAC. And we are very happy that they are all playing active role in this NES process and have played a very active role in organizing this land forum. ILC as a coalition aims at 3 main strategic objectives, as you will see it also through the NES presentations. We aim at connecting land stakeholders. We also aim at supporting capacity development for land stakeholders. And last but not least, we aim at influencing land governance processes at national, regional, and global level. The coalition focuses on 10 main thematic areas, and we have 2 main flagship programs. One is called NES. This is a program at national level, like the one Uganda land actors starting to and launching in this land forum. But we also have another program that we call CBI, or commitment-based initiative, that is at regional or global level. Through the 2 flagship programs, we work with land stakeholders in countries or in the region to influence land processes in favor of people who live and work and work on land. I will not take much time because NES Uganda has been well introduced by Ian, and you know there is a session for NES Uganda tomorrow at 2, and I welcome all of you to attend that session to learn much more in details about NES Uganda. Once again, I want to reiterate our pleasure and commitment to work with land actors in Uganda through this NES program that we are launching today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you very much, dear distinguished participants. At this juncture in time, we are going to have the Honorable Minister of State for Lands, Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, to come up and do three things. The first one will be to launch the national engagement strategy. And then secondly, she will make her opening remarks. And then shortly, the Honorable Minister will declare the National Land Forum 2018 officially open. And then thereafter, we'll go for a group photo, and that will mark the first session, that is the opening session. So at this juncture in time, I call upon Honorable Persis Namuganza to perform the three functions that I've just mentioned. Honorable Minister.
Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to this very important National Land Engagement Forum. The National Land Engagement Forum, or strategy is a part of the National Land Policy 2013. We therefore thank ILC Trachea for initiating the process. I therefore want to officially first launch this forum, and then I give my opening remarks. Thanks everybody for participating. Better, even. Yeah. These ones are better. Is it C? Oh, it's not. That's better.
Is it honorable?
The other marker is
Honorable, do you mind if we took a group photo?
I speak.
With the national just in front here.
Okay, it's better. Yeah.
Please jump this wire.
What speech?
Yes. Our distinguished guests, this group photo marks the official launch of the National Engagement Strategy. Thank you. Yeah. No, this was
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and privilege for me to give these welcoming remarks at the opening of this National Land Forum, whose theme is the Land Act at 20, Making Land Work for Uganda. This theme is very appropriate given the many reforms government has articulated and approved in the 2013 National Land Policy. It is proper and fitting that citizens of this country should give due cognizance and priority to understanding and participating in land reforms because they do impact on everybody's well-being and development at large. Land as a factor of production is a source of livelihood for the majority, women, men, children, youth, the vulnerable, and the poor. It signifies cultural identity and the historical background of families, clans, and communities in Uganda. However, there have been challenges surrounding the ownership and utilization of land. We currently live in a world in which conflict and disasters continue to cause immense suffering, including loss of property and extensive damage to infrastructure and the environment. Whenever these calamities occur, they take us many years back in our efforts to provide sustainable land management practices for Ugandans. Our country has also witnessed new land access patterns and land administration, which have partly contributed to a generation of land conflicts. The Land Act was able to address some, but others may call for reforms if we are to have a prosperous Uganda. Some key issues that require reflection of the Land Act include unlawful land evictions, which have adversely affected the majority and most vulnerable categories of people in communities. If left without introducing reforms, customary owners and tenants on registered land may suffer tenure insecurity and live under fear of being evicted, especially as the growing scarcity for land increases. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a challenge of underutilization and under-exploitation of our natural resources because of use of poor technology, poor infrastructure, and lack of utilization of local and foreign knowledge. This has kept land unused, hence the need to sensitize the landowners to put their land into productive use. The incidence of land use conflicts within and across our borders is a worrying phenomenon. These conflicts are many and include human-wildlife conflicts, livestock, crop farming conflicts, competition over water conflicts, territorial and boundary conflicts, human settlement and environmental conflicts, mining and rural settlement conflicts, historical injustices conflicts, and landlord and tenant conflicts. These conflicts have persisted because of lack of a comprehensive land reform program to adequately address causes and resolve them once and for all through a systematic demarcation program of all land in Uganda. We are all aware of the historical injustices related to land, as land grievances and stretch back to the colonial era, and which resulted in the disinheritance and grabbing of communities, clans, and individual customary land. These injustices arose from dispossession of land resources and require redress. The National Land Policy has provided for alternative to resolve these issues, and so its implementation should be supported. In addition, our urban areas continue to grow at a pace that considerably exceeds the average. Physical planning has not kept pace with rapid urbanization and population increase, causing inadequate supply of serviced land for urban activities and industries. In view of these circumstances, the land reforms proposed in the National Land Policy may require inclusion into the Land Act to be able to support Uganda's drive to become a prosperous and industrial country with a developed services sector. Since Uganda has a market-driven economy, government's position on land reforms is to ensure that, 1, there are secure and transparent dealings in land. 2, the cost of transactions in relation to doing business must be kept low for citizens and investors so that they don't keep their land idle. There is optimal utilization of land as collateral in order to access credit, regardless of whether it is registered or not registered. Also, there is protection of minority rights of those that are vulnerable. And lastly, in terms of climate change, reforms should ensure environmental protection and sustainability. Issues of land degradation and land fragmentation must also be tackled. Public awareness on a wide range of these land issues is therefore necessary to ensure harmony and common understanding amongst the many demands, needs, and actors on the center of implementation. It is with this background that my ministry wishes to appreciate the initiatives of development partners, CSOs, in supporting the Land Act implementation for the last 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, my ministry shall continue to push for transparent land governance, which requires that certain important preconditions and principles are in place. Such preconditions require that equity, participation, and respect for private property are accepted as tenets of development. It is also based on fundamental acceptance of processes of equitable development and social justice. It is these principles that the ministry shall continue to implement in order to achieve a transparent land governance system in Uganda. Transparent land governance starts with ensuring that land as the critical factor of production is equitably distributed and effectively managed. Let me conclude by again re-emphasizing the point that the ministry will support any partnership geared towards public awareness initiatives, especially on land rights and land reforms as a means of achieving good land governance. Like many of the development partners have requested, that we need really to empower the women and the children so that they have equal land rights. But as we do that, ownership comes with empowerment in regarding to capacity to produce. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you that my ministry has discovered a lot of weaknesses, especially when it comes to vulnerable people to own land. The children or the women per se, even when they lose their husbands and they are economically disempowered, in most cases themselves are forced to get some other men again and help them to dispose of this land. So any woman who is not empowered, if given land, still she will lose this land. I therefore call upon you, development partners, all those who are concerned, as we create a way, we must also make sure that they are economically empowered, they are oriented, so that they can be able to utilize this land if they are to have it productive. I trust that those attending this inaugural National Land Forum shall be provided with more details on the issues I have mentioned. I thank all those who have been involved in the preparation of this inaugural National Land Forum and those that have supported financially, LandNet and others. It's now my pleasure to declare the Land Awareness Week officially open for God and my country. The Right Honorable Prime Minister was supposed to be here. He's in the cabinet, but maybe tomorrow he has promised he will be with you. I wish you nice deliberations and may God bless you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for delivering your remarks. Our dear distinguished participants, we want to thank you so much for your time, and we want to thank you for accepting the changes in the program. The program has not run according to how it was arranged or how it was planned due to unavoidable circumstances, but nonetheless you have been a good audience and I thank you for that. And on that note, I want to call upon Madam Bena Bakide from LandNet Uganda, who is at the same time the MC, to come and guide us on the group photo, direct us as to where we are going to take it from, and maybe make other administrative announcements, if any. Otherwise, on that note, I thank you so much for being a very good audience. God bless you.
Could we please put our hands together for the session chair, the acting permanent secretary, Mr. Juko Richard. Thank you for accepting the changes. And Honorable Minister, thank you. Our next agenda, or on the next item on the agenda, we have a group before we break.